Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how to use async and await when you make a network call. Now unlike the past videos that we've done where we've been in a project and we built out an app, we're just going to use the playground today. So this is an example of how you can use playgrounds to kind of test functionality before you actually implement it into your own app. So what I've gone ahead and done is just create a blank playground, just saved it on my desktop. And then when you create that from scratch, you'll see you just get 2 lines of code. You get the import statement for UIKit, and then you get this var greeting hello playground. Let's get rid of that. And what we're going to do today is use async and await to make a network call to the SWAPI API. So if you aren't familiar with what SWAPI is, it is the Star Wars API. So if I zoom in here a little bit, you can see official Star Wars API. So it just gives you an introduction. You can read through the documentation, and I'll be sure to leave a link in the description so that you can get here easily. And it gives you a whole list of instructions. I recommend you go through, start reading, particularly if you're new to using APIs. Getting familiar with documentation and understanding how it works is always a great skill to have. So recommend you read it, understand getting started, understand how you can make network requests. What we're going to be looking at today specifically is the people. So you can see here we have the endpoint that we'll need to hit, and here they're specifying a specific person. So number 1, that will actually get you Luke Skywalker, as you can see. But we're just going to drop that so that we can get multiple people returned from our network call. So let's go ahead and go back to our playground and let's start building this out. So what we're going to do is we are going to do this in a view model style. So if you were to actually take this into an app, it's pretty simple to just plug and play. So we'll call this a Star Wars view model. So I'll go class Star Wars view model, and we're going to make this observable. And the reason we're going to do that, we're going to have a published property in here for the people that we'll get back, so that if you actually implement this in an app, you just observe the view model itself and you can get the people property and use it in, a form, a list, whatever you want to do with it. So let's do, like I mentioned, that property at published people. And this is going to be an array of people. This will be a custom type that we'll create. So why don't we just go ahead and create that now? So I'll do it outside the class struct people. And people needs to conform to decodable. And in this case, I'll show you what you can do with identifiable. So if you want to add it to an app, pretty simple. And we're just going to get the name just to show you an example of how you can make network calls. So var name type string, and this isn't going to conform to identifiable, so we'll give it var ID, it's just a UUID. And when we do that, we need to do our coding keys, enum conforms coding key, and we're just using the name. So we've gone through, we just created our people struct, and this probably is going to sound better as person. So let's go ahead and change that to person, and this will be person. And now what we want to do, we want to verify that we're actually getting back the right information from our API. So if we go back to SWAPI, I just went back to the home page for it. It actually gives you this kind of like endpoint tester, so you can actually test your requests. And like I mentioned, we aren't going to do the one like they specified. So if you make this request, you can see you get Luke Skywalker. We want to actually get just people. So when I use that request, you can see we have this count of 82. There's next, previous, but there's actually results. And we have things like Luke Skywalker and a number of other characters, so R2D2. Those characters actually live in a results. So what we need to do back in our code is create another struct, and we'll just call this person results decodable, and we just have results, which is an array of person. Okay, simple enough. Now the next thing that we want to do in our class is we will actually make our function that is going to get our people. So let's do func get people. And here's where we start to introduce async and await. So when you make this declaration for the function, you now mark it with async. We'll do throws because there are a number of methods that we'll use in here that are throwing functions. So like the URL request and the response, checking that it's actually an HTTP response. So throws, and then we're going to return an array of person. So let's go ahead, guard let URL equals a URL from a string, and that string, if we go back to our website here, we can copy this and then we'll just append people to the end there. And now what we're going to do is we'll throw an error. So for this, I just want to make an enum for errors. So we'll do enum fetch errors, or fetch error of type error. And we'll have just a couple cases for this. We'll have case bad URL and a case bad response. So here we'll do throw fetch error dot bad URL. Next thing we'll do is we'll actually create our URL request. So let URL request equals URL request from a URL, pass it in our URL. And now here we will get our data and response from a URL session call. So let data, this will be a tuple, response equals try await. So now we're using the await keyword. This is to specify that we're going to wait for our results to come back before we want anything to continue. So URL session dot shared dot data for our URL request. So now you can see we're going to get back data and we'll get back a response. Now what we want to do is we're actually going to check what that response is. So we'll do a guard response, and we want to check that this is actually an HTTP URL response. So associated with the response to an HTTP protocol URL load request. And this is optional. So we want to check the status code. And if you aren't familiar with status codes, basically what we're looking for is the 200. And 200 basically just means that everything worked, it was fine, you can keep doing the work you were doing. If that doesn't work, we will throw our fetch error, bad response. Almost there. We just have 2 lines of code left. So next we have our possible person data. So we'll do like maybe people data equals, we're going to try our JSON decoder. Now we want to decode JSON from that endpoint. Decode. We have the person results.self from our data. So this is just saying that we actually want to take the information from the API and try to decode it into a person results. So we get this results, which is just an array of our persons. And in the person, we'll have a name and the ID that we're generating. And then return maybe people data dot results. So you can see if we hold down option and we click on results, you can see it's an array of person, which is exactly what we specified we wanted to get back. So the next thing I want to do before we actually test this out and see that it's working properly is when this object gets created, so when it's first initialized, we want to make our network call and get back all the people. So we can simply do a custom initializer, and here we use task which is a unit of asynchronous work. So basically you're just specifying to Xcode, hey, anything in here is going to be asynchronous, treat it as such. So task, and within the task, we will set our people equal to try, await, get people. So now it's going to try and make the network call to get the people. When we go into get people, it will evaluate all this code, make sure that it's going to the endpoint, it's going to get the data back for all of our people, and then return those results. If that works, set it equal to the people in our view model. And anytime this changes, it will publish its updates, and that can be observed anywhere that you're using the Star Wars view model. So if we're in the playground, let's just go ahead and test this out. So task, we'll say let people equals try await our Star Wars view model dot get people, and let's just print people dot. How about we do, I'll introduce you, if you haven't seen it before, to something called map. So with map, you can read here, just returns an array containing results over the sequence's elements. So this is fairly simple. We're just going to map, and the shorthand way for doing this, you use the brackets, and $0, that's any element in people. So as we go through people, the very first people element, that'll be Luke Skywalker, like we saw on the web. So just think, okay, this is an individual person. And you can verify that when you actually use a dot, you can now see the two properties that we created on person. So I just want name. So we'll do print out. What this is saying is just print an array of the names that you get from people. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. So if I hit the little play button, it says build succeeded, running. Now you can see at the bottom, there we go. We've got our full array of characters. So that worked perfectly. So you can use this code in really any project you want. You can simply update, obviously, what your structs are, what your models are, if there are other properties you need. If it's not contained in results, you don't need to use that. But this will pretty much be boilerplate for a lot of tasks where you're fetching data. You simply update the URL, update what you're decoding, and that'll work perfectly fine for any project you're going to use it for. So thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like and consider subscribing. I put out videos every week, or most weeks, but thanks again for watching. Catch you in the next one.